So there I was, standing on the edge of my own field, staring at Karen's $30,000 wedding tent flapping like some royal circus setup. Music blasting, her guests trampling all over my soybean sprouts in their high heels. And to top it off, one of her smug caterers actually asked if I could move my tractor. It was apparently ruining the vibe. That's when I quietly flipped the switch, and both manure spreaders fired up with a glorious roar. Smash cut to intro. How the heck did we end up here? Let's backtrack for a second. I'm the sheriff of a peaceful little county nestled deep in the Appalachian foothills. Think thick forests, twisty back roads, and folks will still give you a wave as they pass, whether they like you or not. I spent 2 decades in the military before moving home to take care of my dad after his first stroke. He passed away last spring, left me everything, the land, the woods, and the hunting lodge he built himself over 30 years with nothing but grit and bare hands. He always called this lodge his church, and now, standing there, surrounded by tall pines and silence, I finally understand it. This place is not just wood and nails. It is history. It is blood and bones. It's the place where he taught me how to be calm, how to keep my boots clean in a dirty world, and how to deal with people who think rules are suggestions. Which brings us to Janet Langford, recently divorced, bitter as a lemon rind, and clinging to her HOA title like it's a crown. She dresses like she's frozen in a 2004 JCPenney catalog and drives a shiny Lexus that couldn't handle a pothole, let alone a gravel road. She's the type who thinks every issue can be handled with a fine, a form, or a fake-ass smile. I'd seen her before, back when she was still pretending to be the perfect wife in that tidy cul-de-sac right beside my property. I never gave her much thought. That changed the day she decided my dad's lodge was somehow a threat to the delicate harmony of her precious neighborhood. See, my place sits just a few feet outside the HOA's made-up border, 10 feet to be exact. Not in it, never was, never will be. But that tiny detail didn't stop her from stomping up to my front porch one Saturday like she owned the whole mountain. I was midway through fixing a busted storm shutter when I heard that unmistakable sound, heels crunching on gravel. I turned around, and there she stood, arms folded, chin up, looking like a buzzard in pearls. "Well, hi there," she chirped, like she hadn't just waltzed right onto my land without permission. "I'm Janet, HOA president over in Sycamore Bluff. We've had some complaints about your structure." She said structure like she was spitting out a bad taste. I wiped my hands on a rag, raised a brow. "You mean the family lodge?" That tight rehearsed smile slid onto her face. "Yes, well, the logs are untreated, and your woodpile is visible from the road. It just doesn't blend with the neighborhood aesthetic." I glanced over her shoulder at the hills and endless trees, no houses in sight for half a mile. "The neighborhood? You mean the squirrels and raccoons?" Yeah, she didn't like that. Huffed like I'd insulted her ancestors. Then she yanked a stapled packet from her clipboard and held it out like it was divine law. "These are the HOA guidelines. Section 8 covers visible structures, landscaping, and acceptable color schemes." Didn't even take it. "I'm not in your HOA." That faint smile twitched for a split second. "You're adjacent to it. That creates a visual impact. We're working to preserve property values. Here's the thing. I'm not one to stir the pot, but I won't be pushed around either." I laid it out plain for her. "My family's owned this land since 1954. That lodge was here long before your subdivision ever broke ground, and unless your little rule book was signed by the Almighty himself, it doesn't apply to me." I figured that would shut it down. I was wrong. Next week, signs started showing up on the gravel road to my place. "Private, HOA residents only." They looked legit, laminated, nailed down, even had her phony HOA logo on them. One was blocking the hiking trail I've used since I was a teenager. Another was half covering the old "Welcome to Fox Hollow" sign my dad carved with a pocket knife back in the day. I yanked them all out and tossed them into the fire pit that night. By morning, they were back. Then came the fines. Clean, white envelopes with her logo showing up in my mailbox like clockwork. Violation, unauthorized structure. Violation, unapproved fire pit. Violation, wildlife attractant. Apparently, leaving a little corn out for the deer was now some sort of criminal act, at least in Janet Langford's twisted little world. Once again, I reminded her, I'm not in the HOA. I sent a proper cease and desist. Quoted property laws, zoning lines, even attached a map. Hell, I offered to sit down and work it out like adults. She answered by forwarding my violations to the local utility company. That's when it crossed a line. Came home one evening to a dark house. No storms, no downed lines, just dead silence. I checked the meter, and sure enough, someone had shut it off by hand. Called the utility office, and the woman on the phone told me there'd been a report. Safety hazard, unoccupied structure, and potential risk. I had to dig up deeds, ownership records, all kinds of legal paperwork just to get the damn lights turned back on. This wasn't some neighborly spat anymore. This was full-blown war. She wanted that lodge gone, and she didn't give a damn how she got it. What she didn't know is I've got more patience than most folks have sense, and I'm no stranger to a long game. So I started collecting every fine, every letter, photos of her fake signs, even recordings of her threatening calls to other neighbors. One by one, folks started telling me how she'd bullied them too. About bird feeders, lawn chairs, garden gnomes. I was building a file. Quietly, carefully. I wasn't planning to unleash it. Not yet. Part of me hoped she'd just get bored and start picking on someone else's mailbox flowers. But she doubled down. One Saturday morning, I noticed tire tracks cutting through the trail behind my shed. Followed them and found a whole dump of contractor garbage, siding, busted drywall, rusted paint cans, tossed right into the creek bed. Either she did it or she paid someone who did. I filed a report, cleaned it up myself, and decided it was time to make things crystal clear. I built a big wooden sign right at the edge of the property line. Private property, not HOA. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Simple, straight to the point. Next morning, it was gone. Not only was my sign gone, it had been replaced. In its place was a tacky plastic board that read, "Future site of Sycamore Bluffs Nature Park, sponsored by your HOA." That's when it really hit me. This wasn't just some petty power flex. This was a straight-up land grab. She wanted my property absorbed into her little suburban empire, turned into a well-manicured playground for weekend dog walkers and bottomless mimosa brunches. My father's lodge, his pride and joy, flattened to make room for yoga mats and gluten-free picnic benches. But the final blow, the thing that snapped whatever was left of my patience, was the wedding tent. She didn't even ask, just barreled in one morning with trucks, caterers, and a floral crew, acting like she owned the damn place. Said the open field behind my barn was just perfect for her niece's rustic wedding. Claimed the county had given her some kind of verbal approval, like that was supposed to mean something. I watched them hammer stakes into my ground, unroll fancy carpets right over my soybeans, and arrange neat little white chairs like they were staging a magazine shoot. Then one of her smug caterers walked up, looked me dead in the eye, and asked if I could move my John Deere, because it was messing with the aesthetic. That's when I walked over and calmly flipped the switch on the manure spreaders. What happened after that blew up online, but we're not there yet. While half the wedding party was busy dodging flying cow crap and trying to salvage cake from their designer suits, I got a call. It was from the fire department. A blaze, out in the woods, near the lodge. And I knew, before I even flipped the siren on, before I spotted the smoke curling up into the sky, before the thick ash caught in the back of my throat. I knew exactly what I was about to find. I didn't need a report, didn't need to see the flames. Deep down, I already knew. Janet had crossed the line. For real this time. As I sped toward the ridge, I could already see the dark smoke cutting through the sky like a death flag. My radio crackled with updates from dispatch. Ash started to pepper the windshield. Still, I already knew this wasn't a freak accident. It wasn't lightning, wasn't careless campers, wasn't a controlled burn gone wrong. It was arson, plain and simple, and deep in my gut, that same place that always twitched when a suspect was lying to me. I knew exactly who was behind it. By the time I reached the clearing, it was already too late. The fire had chewed through the lodge like it was nothing but kindling. 30 years of sweat and craftsmanship, gone. Charred timber and black smoke was all that was left. The front porch had caved in completely. The chimney stood alone like a tombstone. The old elk head my dad mounted over the fireplace, the one we bagged together when I was 12, was nothing but ashes. The windows were shattered, their metal frames glowing orange in the heat. Fire crews were still working to contain the blaze, trying to stop it from spreading into the rest of the woods. I stood there, soaked in sweat, covered in soot, and clenching my teeth so hard I thought I might break my own jaw. Then I saw Mike, the fire chief, walking toward me with his helmet off and that look on his face. Grim, like he didn't want to speak but had to anyway. "We found a gas can," he said quietly, off to the side of the foundation, tucked under some brush. My jaw tightened. "Could have just been trash," I said, hoping, knowing better. Mike shook his head. "There's more. Multiple ignition points. Accelerants. It was planned." And he hesitated. "You should see this." He led me behind what used to be the old tool shed. Down in the mud were footprints. Not boot prints from firefighters. Not hiking shoes. Tactical. Light tread. Size 8, maybe 9. Definitely too small to belong to anyone on my crew. And they sure as hell weren't mine. But you know who does wear brand new tactical boots when she's pretending to be some forest ranger Barbie? Karen. 2 days earlier, I'd seen her at the Army surplus store, arguing with the cashier over the price of a camo jacket. Called it couture combat wear, like she was heading off to a fashion war zone. And now, here were fresh prints, in the mud, behind my father's burning lodge, boots that matched the exact pair she was bragging about. But the real smoking gun? That came later. See, I'm not stupid. After the shady power shutoff incident, I started putting up backup cameras, hidden ones, wildlife cams, motion-triggered, tucked in trees and rafters, synced to the cloud. ... Little insurance policy. And guess what? Fire can burn a lot of things, but it can't torch the cloud. Back at the station, I pulled up the footage, fast-forwarded through hours of deer, rustling leaves, and blowing branches. Then I saw her. Janet Langford, high priestess of the HOA, wearing full camo, sneaking around the side of the lodge like a third-rate movie villain. Holding a red plastic gas can, she looked over her shoulder twice, then poured the liquid along the base of the wall, lit a rag, looked like a rag anyway, and dropped it like she was christening the Olympic torch. The fire caught instantly. She paused, watched the flames start, and then she turned and walked away. No mask, no scarf, nothing to hide her identity. Just that stupid pressed outfit, and the same smug little grin she wears at HOA meetings when she finds someone for having a plastic flamingo in their yard. She burned down my father's legacy and didn't even flinch. I sat there, staring at the frozen frame of her face lit by the firelight, and didn't move for a full minute. I could have arrested her right then, stormed into her little Stepford McMansion, cuffed her in front of the HOA board and her poodle's stylist. But I didn't. Not yet. Because this wasn't just about a fire anymore. It wasn't even about revenge. This was about every single thing she'd done. The fake signs, the forged fines, the lies, the bullying, the psychological warfare. So I built my case, quietly, carefully. I pulled phone records, checked receipts, tracked her credit card at the gas station where she filled that red can. I spoke to neighbors, ones she'd harassed for wind chimes, for planting flowers, for painting their mailbox the wrong shade of blue. Then I dug into public records, and what I found? Pure gold. Turns out, those HOA bylaws she kept waving around like holy scripture never filed with the county, not once. Which means all the authority she'd been tossing around like confetti, totally made up. And it didn't stop there. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. She'd scared off every other HOA board member until she was the last one standing. The queen of a fake kingdom. Or to be more accurate, she faked their resignations. Those board members never actually stepped down. She just cooked up letters on their behalf, forged their signatures, and submitted them to the HOA newsletter like it was some victory speech. No meetings, no elections, no votes. She just crowned herself queen, and no one challenged her, because frankly, she wore people down. She was exhausting, intimidating, and had the persistence of a raccoon in a locked dumpster. But now I had her, the literal smoking gun. There was just one question that kept nagging at me. Why? Why burn down the lodge? Why take it that far? The answer came from the last person I ever expected, her niece. She showed up at the station the next morning, barely in her 20s, clearly nervous but standing tall. Said she wanted to apologize for the wedding disaster, and also, maybe, share something important. Apparently, Karen had bigger plans, real big ones. She'd been trying to sell the HOA on a wellness retreat expansion. Her dream was to bulldoze the surrounding forest and turn it into some overpriced Zen-themed getaway. Picture a luxury spa, curated hiking trails, a fancy gazebo for influencers. The lodge, and my refusal to hand over the land, was the last hurdle in her way. She figured if the lodge just happened to go away, I'd be so frustrated, I'd cut my losses, sell cheap, disappear. One less stubborn country bumpkin with a deed she couldn't control. I thanked the niece for coming forward, made sure she got home safe, and then opened a new folder in my files. Arson, fraud, forgery, criminal impersonation, harassment, abuse of authority. And that was just what I had so far. But I wasn't ready to charge her just yet. No, she needed to sweat first. I wanted her to keep digging that grave with every smug little HOA notice she posted, every fake violation she dreamed up, every made-up rule she mailed out like gospel. Then, just when I thought the worst was behind me, the final piece of the puzzle landed in my lap. 3 days later, I got a call from one of my deputies telling me I needed to get to the county clerk's office. Urgently, tucked deep inside a stack of newly filed documents was a permit application, with Janet's signature on it. She had filed official paperwork claiming that my land, the one she literally burned, had been annexed by the HOA for community use. She was now legally trying to steal my charred property by declaring it part of her fake expansion plan. And in doing so, she handed me everything I needed. Her final, glorious, irreversible screw-up. She just gifted me the legal grounds to demolish her whole fake empire. Not with a match, but with the law. At this point, the question wasn't if she was going down. It was how loud could I make the fall. I had everything. The gas can, the video footage, the motive, the forged documents, the paper trail, and now a signed county submission where she claimed land she didn't own, post-arson. But here's the thing. I didn't want a quiet arrest. I wanted a show. I wanted her to hear her own smug words echoed back at her in court. I wanted every fake fine, every bogus rule, every scared neighbor she bullied to be part of the story. I wanted her little suburban dictatorship to go down in flames twice as hard as the lodge she torched. So I got to work. Quiet, methodical, patient. And I didn't just stop with the arson. I started combing through everything. Her HOA dealings, her personal finances, shady construction contracts she paid in cash, legal filings that smelled off. I even went through every zoning complaint she'd ever filed and found a pattern. The homes she fined, the people she targeted, always the same kind. Elderly folks, single moms, immigrants, working class people holding down 2 jobs. Folks too tired, too busy, or too scared to fight back. Until now, I went door to door, sat at kitchen tables, drank instant coffee, listened to stories that would make your blood boil. There was Ms. Gladys, whose backyard bird bath got dismantled because it violated aquatic installation guidelines. Frank got fined for using the wrong type of Christmas lights. Only, he's Jewish. It was a menorah. She fined a menorah. She sent out fake invoices with late fees for dues that didn't even exist. Threatened legal action from law firms that, after a little digging, turned out to be completely made up. All part of her intimidation game. And every notice came with a warning about liens on the property, scaring people into coughing up whatever she demanded. She ran her HOA like a dictatorship, backed by fear, wrapped in red tape, and no one had pushed back because no one knew how. Well, now they had me, and I was done being polite. I called in a few favors, got friends at the state level to speed up a review of her so-called HOA charter. Turns out what I suspected was true. The document was never notarized, and nearly every signature was a forgery. Want to know where she got the names? A year-old sign-up sheet from a neighborhood yard sale. She literally used the names of people who came to buy $5 crock pots and folding chairs, then listed them as voting board members of her make-believe kingdom. Once I had that proof, I filed a full report with the county clerk and flagged the HOA as an illegal operation. Got the ball rolling to revoke every bit of power she ever claimed to have. And that was just step 1, because I wasn't going to let her crawl out of the rubble and start over in someone else's neighborhood. No, she was going to be done for good. But as my case got stronger, Janet got bolder, like a cornered raccoon in a pearl necklace. She must have sensed I'd gone quiet. No more emails, no phone calls, no shouting matches. So she tried a new tactic. She sent out a neighborhood-wide newsletter claiming I was under investigation for hostile and antisocial behavior. Even attached a blurry photo of me yawning at a gas station, trying to make me look like a deranged lunatic. She said I was abusing my power, blocking HOA expansion for personal revenge. Cute. Then she organized a mandatory community meeting in the park across from her house, passed around a petition to have me removed as sheriff. She even printed up protest signs. My personal favorite? No law above the HOI. Honestly, she was just making my case easier, but she still wasn't finished. And just when I thought she couldn't top herself, she kicked off the most ridiculous phase of her little delusional empire. She tried to break into what was left of the lodge. Caught her again on my cameras, clear as day. She had a man with her and a measuring tape in hand, claimed he was some kind of restoration consultant. She was trying to appraise it. That's right, she was out there measuring the charred ruins of the lodge she burned down with her own 2 hands, like it was a real estate listing. When I rolled up in uniform, she tried to play it casual. Oh, I was just inspecting the site. For insurance purposes, she said, like we were old friends and I owed her a favor. Smiled like the sun owed her interest. For your insurance? I asked, and let the silence hang. She blinked. Well, community insurance. We're assuming responsibility now. It's being annexed into the HOI proper. It's in transition. I looked down at the mud, at her so-called consultant standing directly on top of the old fire pit my dad dug by hand with a spade and a bad back. The ground still smelled like soot. My jaw locked tight enough to make my molars ache. "Janet," I said, calm and flat, "you're trespassing. And unless you want me to add another charge to the growing pile, I suggest you get off my land, now." The smile drained from her face like I flipped a switch. "You can't be serious," she snapped. "I'm the president of—" "No," I cut in. "You're the self-appointed queen of a fake HOA, built on forged documents, intimidation, and lies. You committed arson. You filed fraudulent claims. And unless you want to find out how handcuffs feel, you better get in your car and disappear." Her consultant took one look at my expression, mumbled something about not being paid enough for this, and made a beeline for his truck. Janet's face turned beet red. Her mouth opened like she was about to go full soprano on me, but then she saw something in my eyes. Something she hadn't seen before. That wasn't frustration anymore. That was the quiet, coiled fury of a man who's been pushed too far, too long. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse and filed the arrest warrant myself. Didn't hand it off to anyone else. Didn't trust anyone else to get it right. Arson, vandalism, filing false claims, harassment, forgery, impersonating an official, wire tampering. The charges stacked higher than her Christmas tree made entirely of gold-plated HOA ornaments. Got the judge to sign off by that afternoon. But I wasn't stopping there. I called up a few of the folks she'd harassed over the years, the ones she fined, bullied, threatened, told them it was happening, asked if they wanted to witness the fall. They showed up with lawn chairs, popcorn. One guy even brought a megaphone. When we pulled up to her pristine white McMansion, she was hosting another HOA meeting in the front yard. Clipboards on every folding table, branded banners hanging like it was some kind of corporate retreat. She had her back to us, ranting about someone's hedge being half an inch too ambitious when I called her name. "Janet Langford," I said, voice even and loud enough for the whole block. She turned around, clearly irritated, then froze. I stepped forward and read every single charge out loud, slow and steady. Her face went from smug to confused to red-hot rage to pale as chalk. I could see the exact moment reality hit, the second she realized the man she'd spent months harassing, the one she thought was just some backwoods sheriff with a badge and a stubborn streak, was about to shut her whole circus down. "You can't arrest me," she screamed. "I'm the president. This is illegal." I held up the warrant. "This says otherwise." We cuffed her right there on her manicured lawn. The same neighbors she'd terrorized over garden gnomes and mailbox colors clapped. One even hit play on the national anthem through a Bluetooth speaker. She shrieked about civil liberties, threatened lawsuits, and then, in a last-ditch effort to play victim, flung herself dramatically into her hydrangeas. Didn't help, and just before we shut the cruiser door, one of my deputies leaned over and whispered, "So, you still want to press charges for the wedding tent?" I grinned. "Oh, I'm just getting warmed up." Court day came quicker than expected, not because the justice system's fast, it usually isn't, but because I made sure everything was airtight. Every dotted I, every crossed T. I wanted her to walk in thinking she could talk her way out of it like always, and I wanted to watch that illusion crumble in real time. She strutted into the courtroom in a beige pantsuit that screamed, "I've never done anything wrong," flanked by some second-rate lawyer who looked like he was charging by the minute just to pretend she had a case. The courtroom wasn't packed, but the right people were there. Miss Gladys with her bird bath photos, Frank with his evidence of the menorah fine, a handful of others clutching binders full of bogus notices, fake threats, and HOA extortion tactics. I sat straight-backed in uniform. No smirk, just calm. Karen, because no one was calling her Janet anymore, put on her usual show. Claimed the fire was a misunderstanding. Said she'd been clearing brush, and maybe accidentally spilled something flammable. Said the lodge was abandoned, and she was just making room for green development. Her lawyer tossed out words like miscommunication, civic responsibility, clerical oversight. But then the video rolled. Crystal clear footage of her in full camo, tiptoeing around the lodge, pouring accelerant like she was watering flowers, lighting it like she was proud of it. The whole room watched in dead silence. Even her lawyer stopped talking, just looked down at his notes and sighed. The judge asked the bailiff to rewind it. Everyone watched it again. After that, there was no debate, no question, no spin. She was guilty. The judge didn't pull punches. Gave her 5 years probation, mandatory community service, and full restitution. Not just a slap on the wrist. Full, court-approved valuation of the lodge, all damages and emotional distress. The total? Over $910,000. She flinched when she heard it. Her insurance didn't cover intentional acts of arson. That meant everything came out of her pocket. Her Lexus, her savings, even her perfectly pruned palace of a house. I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I just stood there and watched her whole world buckle under the weight of her own arrogance. But funny enough, the best part didn't even happen in court. It came a week later when I filed a civil suit on top of the criminal conviction. I didn't do it for the money. The lodge had partial insurance coverage, and I had the tools and the grit to rebuild. I did it to make everything public. I wanted every shady document she'd ever filed, every phony fine, every forged signature, out in the open where it couldn't be buried. I wanted it all on the record, that everything she built was a lie, and it worked. The county finally reviewed her so-called HOA charter and stamped it as invalid, without any legal standing. Every single action she'd taken as president was wiped off the books. Every lien, gone. Every bogus fine, null and void. Every threat, emptied of power. What passed for her board dissolved overnight. And with no funds left to cover legal fees, the bank wasted no time. Her picture-perfect McMansion got tangled in court-ordered payments. She was forced to put it up for sale. Last I heard, it's still sitting there, empty. A crooked price-reduced sign out front, fading in the sun. No one wants to buy the house where the HOA tyrant held court and handed out threats like Halloween candy. As for the people she tormented, they threw a barbecue the weekend after the verdict. A real one. Ribs on the grill, cornbread warm from the oven, coolers full of beer. Kids ran wild through sprinklers with no one barking about noise ordinances or approved cutlery. No clipboards, no restrictions, just people being people again. Miss Gladys brought me a plate, patted my arm and said, "Feels like the end of a long winter." I knew exactly what she meant. As for the lodge, I rebuilt it. Not a replica. Some things you can't recreate, but I made it stronger. Used fire-resistant materials, reinforced the frame, added solar panels, built a proper stone fire pit out front. I even carved a new wooden sign in the same style as my dad's, this time right under Fox Hollow Lodge. I added a little extra line with a wood-burning pen. Karen proof since 2023. It made me laugh. I think Dad would have liked it too. But the real cherry on top? That came with her court-ordered community service. By law, she was assigned to the county maintenance crew, repainting benches, scrubbing public restrooms, cleaning up graffiti. I drove past one day and spotted her in a neon orange vest, power washing a sidewalk near the park she once tried to claim was private HOA land. A group of teenagers was filming her. She turned away from the camera, but someone shouted, "Hey, aren't you the lady who burned down the forest?" And the look on her face? It almost made me feel sorry for her. Almost. She still tries now and then, sends in appeals, writes long-winded letters about being misunderstood, framed, politically targeted. None of it sticks. Every agency she contacts already has the proof. Every judge she pleads to has seen the footage. Her name is mud. And not even the old HOA newsletter. Now long dead, can spin that into something clean, but I don't think about her much anymore. These days, I spend most mornings at the new lodge, tinkering, fixing things up, hunting when the season's right. I drink my coffee on the porch while the fog rolls through the trees like smoke that came to comfort, not destroy. I planted wildflowers where the old foundation once stood. Let the woods reclaim what was stolen. I even rebuilt my dad's memorial bench. This time I stained it darker, sealed it twice, and bolted it to the ground, just in case. Sometimes people ask if I regret not arresting her sooner, if I wish I'd shut her down the very first time she marched up with that fake smile and her nonsense clipboard. And maybe in another life, I would've. But here, in this story, I'm glad I waited, because this wasn't just about punishing her. It was about sending a message that you don't get to bully your way into power and walk away clean. That when you treat the law like it's beneath you, don't be surprised when the guy you've been messing with turns out to be the one writing the arrest warrant. In the end, all she had to do was leave me alone, respect the line that wasn't hers to cross. But Karen never saw a boundary she didn't think she could bend. Never heard a no she didn't try to argue into a maybe. And so she lost everything. And me, I gained something better than revenge. I gained peace. And every now and then, when a new family moves into the neighborhood and asks what happened to the HOA around here, I smile, point toward the hills, and say, let's just say they picked the wrong property to mess with. Then I offer them coffee. No forms, no fines. Just neighbors, the way it ought to be. If you like this story, please don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and write a comment. Thanks for watching.